And we're live. Hello, Anthony. Good to see you.
To see you, man. Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody watching. Today is a very special episode because we have no outside guests. It's just Anthony and myself who are here to go a bit deep onto why we're doing the things that we're doing right now, what it means for us to be building BorgPads, why we've taken the choice, what it means for you guys, what it means for the industry, and just generally speaking, the philosophy about that led us to this decision and the vision we have towards the future. Would you say that's an accurate description of what we're trying to say today here, Anthony?
Yeah, very, very accurate. I think there is a lot to say, of course, at BorgPad. I wanted to start as well by keep repeating it's a detail, but I think it tells a lot about how SwissBorg wants to evolve in the future. BorgPad is an independent initiative. So we strongly invested, I personally, I am strongly invested into this independent initiative because I believe it's the piece of all the spin-off we've done in the past that I think has the better integration within what SwissBorg has built until now. But it's important to remind ourselves that this project will live by its own as well. It's been financed by our own personal money as founders, but we really, really nurture this idea that the goal of SwissBorg is to become ultimately an ecosystem that operate between different bricks that have their own personality. They have their own. We all agree on the same philosophy of the world we want to create, but we are different expression of this philosophy through the embodiment of different projects that serve different purpose, but collectively collaborate toward this vision of the world. And why it is so important is if you look technically speaking, people will say, oh, but SwissBorg is heavily centralized because of the technology. But then when you look at the philosophy, or when you take a little bit of, let's say, you look at from the eye view, bird view perspective, then you will find out that we are one of these companies that managed to organize itself by doing spin-off or growing, not necessarily by employing more and more people, but by nurturing an ecosystem that actually feed itself but respect the same philosophy, which is the most important part, right? Is to align people that come together to achieve a common mission. And I guess that's critically what is missing in the space, because ultimately it's not even a debate or, are you technology more centralized or decentralized? It's why the intent. You might be centralized today, but you're gradually moving toward a more decentralized infrastructure, and it's fine. Because if you keep this intent very strong, you're much better than someone that forced themselves into a decentralized architecture that leads nowhere. And I guess when you look at the timeline, sometimes there is this ideological debate that is a nonsense. And I'm sure today we're going to discuss about it.
See, one of the first things, not one of the first things, but things you told me a long, long while ago is the way, as founder of SwissBorg, the way you see SwissBorg in 5-10 years' time is not as a company with thousands of employees, but you saw it as a much more horizontally scaling ideology, even or philosophy of how to operate within technology, broadly speaking, not even crypto. And Xborg was the first initiative that obviously you patroned as well in a very heavy way with Louis. And there's been more that have been spinning off, and we're following them. And now we have this new one with BorgPad. And BorgPad, so to speak, is, as you said, is the closest one that we have actually to the mothership SwissBorg. It's almost like the on-chain arm of SwissBorg. And maybe we can start today by discussing why we think it's important to bring an on-chain arm of SwissBorg actively into the on-chain ecosystem, being directly Web3 native, rather than, as you said before, still relying heavily on centralized infrastructure, even though the vision is decentralized. So we kind of the first real tangible action towards decentralizing a big part of the chunk and the mission and even the whole brand of SwissBorg.
Okay, so I mean, first of all, I want to make things very clear. SwissBorg always believed into the decentralized philosophy. The reason why we started to basically build with a lot of centralized brick is because of the UX. I think it was very clear for us that UX was primordial. Helping to reduce the friction as much as possible was essential for us as an ecosystem that wants to help people to invest better, because not only we help people to get access to crypto assets, but the other part of the mission is to make investment less boring. It needs to feel like it's pleasurable. It's something, I'm coming to the app and experiencing something new. It's not homework. Otherwise, we were losing as well to this game, right? Everything needs to be seen from the perspective of an invitation to experiment something new. That's key. Now, in the past 7 years since we started SwissBorg, a lot of things have been built decentralized and help us to actually capitalize on this technology to progress in our roadmap, which aim ultimately to be as much decentralized as possible. I think there is many illustration of what we've done in the past that shows that we are truly committed to that goal. The Smart Yield program was one of the first embodiment of this philosophy, right after the token. The Smart Yield program helped anybody very quickly to capture yield that were on chain. So very difficult to access. At that time, gas fees were incredibly expensive. I remember there was some transaction where you had to pay $4,000 just to execute on Ethereum. So it was crazy. But we repackage, or because we see the great benefit of building yield on chain, and we repackage that into the app and give access through our app. So through a simplified UI to decentralized opportunities. And thankfully, and not only we did that because there was a great commercial potential, but as well because we believed that was the right thing to do, right? And as a result, we didn't collapse like the Celsius, the Voyager, and all these guys, because by embracing the decentralized philosophy, we wanted transparency, we wanted a bunch of byproduct of decentralization that were acting like a guardian of the fact that we're not going to fall into the trap of basically doing shortcuts that ultimately led us to one of the worst bear market that we experiment. So I think as well is when you get to this philosophical debate, you can lose a lot of person, but I think philosophy is a testimony to values, and values ultimately, especially in finance, act as a safeguard of a certain safety net for your investment. And that's why for us, building with this mindset of decentralization is so key, because it helps us to keep the right North Star, which is ultimately wealth management, which is helping people not to lose money, basically, or to have a prosperity into their wealth. Cool. The most recent illustration of this commitment to decentralization is what we call the MEX, which is ultimately the capacity for SwissBorg to directly offer within the app tokens that are listed nowhere but on DEX. And we have few illustrations this year. It's still nascent technology at the core of what SwissBorg is. But we see already the greatest benefit. And as a matter of fact, the most interesting token this year were not listed on exchange. They were listed on centralized exchange. They were listed on decentralized exchange. So I guess that's our next play. That's where we are going, right? Is to find the right equilibrium in the app that help us to offer the benefit of going decentralized without having to compromise on the UX. And that's been the philosophy, and that's been the bet as well since the very early days, and we keep going into the direction. And in that sense, BorgPad plays a critical role into this entire strategy.
Exactly, because BorgPad now essentially is the first product that follows that philosophy outside of the app. Everything we've done until now was still within the app's ecosystem, but obviously building within an app that is facing, by next month and a half, a new set of regulations with Mika coming in. It's quite hard because there's a lot of friction of onboarding, plus there's some sort of stickiness as well that's going on. And more like if you're already on other exchanges, not evident that you're going to go through KYC 1, 2, 3 potentially on SwissBorg again. So, and we're limited as well in terms of countries. There's only about 40, 50 countries today that SwissBorg operates in. So the vision of BorgPad was to bring that philosophy on chain and open the gates of what we've been doing within the app as far back as I joined and far before, in terms of philosophically speaking, what we say, like the principles of sound, safe wealth management and sound first principles when it comes as well to what kind of projects to support and the projects that we build, bring that to a whole new demographic and a whole new ecosystem directly on chain. So we're building BorgPad directly on Solana at the moment. It was a bet that we did a long time ago. You know, SwissBorg, as you said, with the MEX is another good example. We've integrated a bunch of DEXs now on Solana. We've seen that the capital, in fact, is moving from centralized exchanges onto decentralized exchanges. And so I almost feel like the nexus in timing is optimal for us. We're seeing that, and maybe we can start without speaking about this next. The old meta that we've seen so far about project listing on Binance, and that was a holy grail for any new project coming in, is dying. And at the same time, we've seen capital moving from off-chain to on-chain. And we see that in the growth of wallets like Phantom, especially everything on, even though it's just potentially for trading meme coins, but we see the volumes that are meme coins, we're seeing that the relevance, the future is on-chain, is really materializing already in this cycle. And so BorgPad is this first real big initiative for SwissBorg being, okay, it's outside of the app, it carries the same values, and we're going to spread it to everybody who's willing to come with us on-chain and do things the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well there is a fantastic synergy between the two, because in a sense, for now, BorgPad is ultimately built for founders that I think we lose a little bit the compass in the space, right? So let's be honest, we've been meeting a lot of founders at BorgPad, even at personal level, I've been meeting a lot of founders, and it's like a lot of them are lost because the space do not offer a lot of different perspective or narrative and stuff, right? So on one hand, we have SwissBorg that needs to keep building for the mass, like the people that want exposure to crypto asset, that want frictionless exposure to crypto asset, that want something safe. And ultimately, as well, they want to potentially access that through the lens of a sort of curation. And again, it's something that we work internally because it's not very clear. Sometimes people say, I love SwissBorg because the marketplace is offering some sort of curation, but it has never been explicit. And at the same time, what we see is curation it's something extremely difficult in the space. And how do you judge curation? Because there is different spectrum to what curation can offer, right? Maybe a meme coin in itself that we know for by design is the likelihood is to go down with time. Maybe some sort of curation can focus on the distribution at the very, very early days, and it constitutes a sort of community and a sort of investment, a product in itself. So it's not an easy thing to answer, but that's what SwissBorg needs to focus on, right? Is to offer all the elements that can convince anyone that they are going to experience the superior investment experience by going to SwissBorg. So that's the retail part. The other part of what BorgPad is addressing, and you say as a product, as a byproduct as well, we are going to attract more users because it's on chain, there is no KYC. So basically we address the bigger community while SwissBorg keep focusing on the European market. But let's say we address a more advanced and sophisticated community, which are the founders and the people that are ready to invest on chain. That basically where we tap on. And there is a beautiful streaming loop as well, because if we convince founders that SwissBorg as an ecosystem is great, and we create very positive experience with BorgPad as a first interaction, then they're going to become the best ambassador across their community of the SwissBorg ecosystem that ultimately will reflect on nourishing the entire ecosystem with more user, more value, and basically lead us to the right path. And in that sense, that's the playbook of Binance. They've been growing, of course, they've done tremendous effort on the B2C level, but a bunch of that growth came from a B2B2C in a sense, listing tokens that everyone wanted with big community that became back then the unique gateway, because those DEX were actually nothing. They were very hard to use. Guys-wise, UX-wise, there was a bunch of limitation, bunch of barrier for people to use DEX. It's not the case anymore, which is the interesting part. And that's why the MEX and what we're doing is so exciting. But leave it aside, 4 years ago, if you become the first platform to list a token that has a huge community, as a result, you grow tremendously. And Binance, they don't really publish their stat when it's come to their user onboarding when they were listing new project. But if you take an actor such as CoinList, I remember one day they list this token. I think it was Casper or some sort of L1. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. But the result of offering the capacity for people to invest in the primary market for Casper resulted in 150K onboarding, new user onboarding, which is massive. There is no company in the world that will get you this level, no KOLs, nobody that will get you this level of traction. So that's ultimately where we're going, right? Is we're trying to create a more diverse ecosystem. And I think that's a shame because SwissBorg is such a great platform with so many regards, but we have been untapping into this B2C potential, which is the biggest. And that's what BorgPad ultimately is looking to achieve.
Yeah, so BorgPad could be seen as a new top of funnel for the whole SwissBorg ecosystem. But obviously, that's a positive corollary. It's not the main reason why we're doing this, right? The bigger reason is we felt deeply compelled to start BorgPad because we want to create a renaissance in the industry, broadly speaking. We see a lot of things that are not going well today, where we think the value proposition of the Web3 space is broken. It's very hard to come in as an entrant, and maybe you can tell us more about your thoughts and perception on that. And with BorgPad, under a new narrative umbrella that we're calling Better Than Sex, we want to usher this new generation of projects, and with that, over the coming years, the new generation, the new cycle of projects that will mark a difference and that will, again, allow us to grow the pie. Anthony, let me ask you, why do you think that we are right now in the current state of crypto, this PvP state that Arthur Hayes coined a few weeks ago with this article, but truly just means it's just a zero-sum game. That's very hard for anybody new to come in, and it's very hard for anybody else who's already in it to stay in it, because just the asymmetry of power and information just leads to something quite, well, not optimal. You've been there since day one in crypto. I remember your early first days with Dash. Tell us, how did we come in? Maybe you can give us a 5 minutes quick recap of from ICO craze to where we are today with meme coins as an act of rebellion. And then we can maybe speak about how we, with BorgPad, are going to solve this and Better Than Sex.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I want to start by saying there's still a lot of positive in the space, right? There's that we want it or not, what has been achieved. And sometimes it's too much of the silent minority, because the people are actually building, they don't spend time on the timeline. And the timeline is, the crypto timeline, Twitter timeline is heavily emotional, influenced by price. But when you look at what the space has been achieving in the past 10 years, it's good. It's strong, right? Of course, Bitcoin is the most major asset this year. We've seen ETF, which could be seen as an achievement at the financial level. Of course, it could be as well a little bit, not necessarily the best outcome for people that believe 1% into decentralization. But anyway, it's a sign, I think, of strong maturity, and it took time to achieve such a maturity. Now, if we focus on the state of the space, I think we are at the period of normalization. Again, we've seen strong business being built. People that actually make money. They actually help Web2 businesses as well to get into crypto, not with the, let's say, the hype stuff such as NFT, do your Starbucks NFT collection, and etc. And it doesn't really work. Everyone farmed the grants and leave overnight because the intent initially was not really there, right? It was just seen as a marketing campaign, not as something that fundamentally changed the business. But there's people that see Web3 as a tool to fundamentally change the status quo of what's going on in Web2, because the monopolistic status of many companies in Web2 is not optimal. And that's why Web3 was nurtured initially, is to challenge the monopolistic status quo of money, attention, data. There is a bunch of things that are being building. But of course, it takes time. 15 years for, is it 15? Yeah, 15 years for Bitcoin to get where it is today, right?
It was 16 years since the white paper last week.
Yeah. So, regardless of the timing, but the outcome of this is, as much as human, we want to bend time, it's not compressible. So what finance is actually giving you a taste of what the future can be by helping you to speculate. It's called the financiarization of ideas, of prospect, and etc. But sometimes, especially, and we can discuss that in more length, but especially in the world today where we built, like, you look at the society today, it's most of the pattern that you see today as the result of the monetary policy of the past, the same 15 years when Bitcoin was invented. It's the financial crisis. Monetary policy and low interest rate, right? Prolonged low interest rate with, in a result, built financial model, and financial model were that was not sustainable. So I think what we're living now is a period of normalization, and we see clear differences between what Bitcoin does as a performance and what the altcoin market is doing. And that is the result of an hyper-financialization of the altcoin market. And what does it lead us, if I try to speak normally, is if you want, when you invest, you are betting on the potential output of the value creation machine, right? But when the gap between the perspective of or what is the effective output of the value creation machine and what has been invested, when the gap between too large, it is when things start not to work anymore. And it's not an isolated phenomenon. Is just to finish on that, the private equity market is in big crisis as well in the traditional market. There's a lot of merger and acquisition. Why? Because the IPO model is stuck, right? How many IPOs did we learn that were postponed and etc.? Why? It's not because, of course, the macro environment is a factor to consider when you do an IPO, but as well it is how high your valuation on the primary market went, right? And so many people are afraid to go on IPO just to find out actually that this valuation was too inflated, and they don't find the appetite. So I think we find exactly the same in crypto. So it's not an isolated phenomenon. I think we just have to go through a phase of normalization, especially in an environment where rates are not to zero anymore. So it changed the perspective and the microscope. So we'll see where it leads us, but it's just normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Also, before I count on what you just said, for everybody listening to us and who doesn't speak Anthony, what do you mean with the value creation machine? Can you maybe as a term?
Yeah, so let me try to simplify it as much as possible. So when you look at the dude like Elon Musk, right? I can't remember when SpaceX was created, but let's say, I think 9 years ago. 19 years ago, I think. Anyway, he come to us and say, we're going to go becoming a multi-planet species, and I'm going to start by building rocket ship that actually land themselves and cost nothing, right? That's the claim. When you start to invest, but there is nothing, right? When you start to invest in the guy trying to already monetize or financialize the feature of value creation, which is which is basically closing the gap between what was the claim and what will effectively happen in the future, right? So it took, which is nothing, 19 years to actually create this beautiful piece of technology that goes and come back, which is, unheard of, which is crazy, right? So that's the effective output. Is how much do I inject capital, and what's the result, the effective result that can be measured. Anyone with a screen can measure it. Is tremendous value, and then we're going to go speculating again. What does it mean for the future? In crypto, the same happens. It's the same logic, right? But when you inject so much money and the output, because in this roadmap of the 19 years, there was output, measurable output, that help us to assess how close I am to the final output or what was expected in the first place, right? When you look at crypto, there is a lot of promises, but what's the effective output? What's the measurable output? And you can look that from so many lenses. The onboarding, how much we change, for example. I don't know, we promise we're going to all own our own data and monetize our data. Where are we in this roadmap, right? So I think that's what is the crisis right now, right? Is there was an immense amount of money injected, which inflate everything, valuation charts and etc. But the result of that is not enough, right? And even if you look at we've done again, I'm not criticizing, we've done a lot, but if you look at the app that you use every day on crypto as a normal user, you can count them on the hands, right? And there is millions of tokens. So you see this doesn't hand well, and that's what we're living right now. But it's okay again because we did so much progress that I believe, anything can be changed very quickly, and I think we just need to accept. I think there is something as well that the space needs to accept is we need maybe just to get rid of the old mentality and say, okay, we went wrong, we did some very wrong assumption of our output, which resulted into inflated valuation and this type of things, many other things, such as what do you do usually when you just realize that actually you cannot keep up with the value creation? You start to look for short-term strategies. And that's why what we call the sex cartel, which are the market maker, the centralized exchange, to some extent the KOL, and all the different short-term solutions, they are so predominant because they are a response to the lack of actually output of the entire space. People are looking for a solution to make people wait for effectively producing the outcome. The problem, it doesn't work because it cannibalizes all your energy, your money, and the result of that is we've seen so many tokens going to zero and will never come back. And I think for me, that's the worst feeling. If you invest into a project, the project failed because they couldn't deliver on the technology. There was assumptions that were made on the first place, because that's what it is, right? Investing is assessing the assumption and trying to estimate, are the assumption right? And sometimes you're wrong, and it doesn't work, and it's fine. But if you made assumption and you lose yourself into doing something different to what you come on the first place, that's the problem, right? And I think that's what I remind people as well sometimes at SwissBorg, community member as well, when they say, oh, why you guys don't do this? Why you don't do B2B? Why you don't jump there? I say, yes, sometimes it's adverse. The market conditions are not the best. But we raise money and we collect money from the community for a very simple mission, which is to give the chance to anybody to becoming financial independent. And we have to be loyal and we have to stick to this, right? Even though opportunity arise, because otherwise you're always trying to chase the next short-term opportunity. And it doesn't lead to value creation ultimately, because you don't become an expert overnight. So I think ultimately what we're saying in a sense is that's what BorgPad is trying to bring to the table, is to bring a compass for founders and community, that they can start to think again long term, because we align everyone incentive and we make it very clear from the get-go. And we come up with a model that is, I think, very inclusive and very thoughtful of how progressively you create a community. When you look at what happened in the past year, right? So there was millions of tokens created, mainly memecoin. And memecoin somehow, right? And when you look at, again, Murad and what he's saying in his presentation, there is a bunch of things that he's saying that are very true. He say memecoin are an attack not to the tech companies, but to the tech utility coin. Sorry. And I think, to some extent, what you have to give to memecoin is they partially offer some clue of how do we need to respond to the current crisis. And one of the very strong signal that what memecoin give us as an indication is we need to give back to the community. So people that actually fight for you every day, even at their very little scale, you need to give them a chance to participate early, because it creates this very virtuous loop of people being successful, being rewarded for their conviction, because it's not easy to have conviction, and ultimately become the best evangelist. As opposed to giving a lot of stakes to people that are just here as liquidity provider, basically. And they jump from project to another. It's not really conviction, it's a mathematical game. So memecoin have this right. You need to give the chance to yourself to build a community early on, because your token cannot succeed without a community. And I think what in essence Murad is saying, which is the most interesting part, is say, especially early on, the value of the token is less binding to technology or features, which are ultimately a proxy of future revenue, but they are more pegged, or they are more influenced. The token value is more influenced to the community, which ultimately translate into free labor, because people are working very hard to make their bag known and, of course, pump. And I think it's very smart to seeing the thing this way. So I think the number one assumption that is made in the space that is wrong is, if I get all this VC, all this KOL, all this artificial traction, I will tick all the boxes for the due diligence of this centralized exchange. I'll pay a lot of money. I land on the exchange and my job is done because I've created a community. But actually what happened is exactly the opposite. When you land on this exchange and you exhaust yourself with the money, you fool yourself with artificial metric, you land at an insane valuation, because you have to feed a chain of intermediary that is so huge that actually you interest no one. You don't interest the speculator. You don't interest the early days community, and more importantly, you don't even interest value investor because they see no value in what you're doing. They see the gap between your current valuation and the effective output of your value machine is too large. So you land in a no man's land. So what are you going to do? You're going to spending money with market makers and KOL and all these things that just artificially trying to maintain, right? And that's why you see sometimes pump and dump because it's just artificial. So the main message of BorgPad is to say, no, guys, you have to grind. And as we say, the corollary of what we just say is you as founder, you're not going to become rich overnight. You will have to grind yourself, which is just normal. And we offer a compass. We're not saying everyone is wrong. And all. Actually, I think it's very, very healthy when we have a project that have VC backing because they come from different purpose. They come as value investor for the long term. Community can come for the distribution effect. But helping, like, it's very critical to understand, getting the chance for people to participate into the value creation of the distribution is key. It's the number one key, and that's what needs to be fixed. Now, coming back to the memcoin, and again, there is so much we can learn from them, and there is so much value in them. And I'm not trying to categorize them in all the same bracket, but let's say for the most of them, even if you look at the statistic of Pump.Fund, which is the memcoin launchpad by excellence, right? They've released, I think, 2 or 3 or 4 million tokens since the beginning of the year. The odds of success, first of all, are very slim. They are very, very low, right? We can share that on the Telegram channel for the one that wants to join. There is someone that do analytics, and it's very clear what's the odds of success. I think as well there is a wrong message that memcoin try to vehiculate. They try to vehiculate the idea that they are proxy or tokenization of culture. And to me, they are tokenization of culture, but not all the culture, and certainly not the tech culture. Let me explain myself. They are the tokenization of the pessimistic culture. The pessimistic culture that is the result of people don't find their place within society because of political condition, because of financial monetary policy, because of we live globally in a crisis, right? The family model has been disrupted. The gender model has been disrupted. So we live in this very, very strange era where we see very, very powerful men accumulating a lot of wealth and money. We have an over access of information, right? So the mind becomes obese as a result, and we lose the compass of what it is to be a man, what it is to be a dad, what it is to be a family man, right? So the result of that is people becoming increasingly pessimistic about the future. So what the memcoin are is they are you speculating that there will be more and more pessimistic people giving up on all the foundation of society and saying, you know what, fuck it. I'm just going to gamble the little money that I have to trying to escape the matrix into a memcoin. And it's fundamentally different from the tech world. The tech world is about criticizing what is the status quo and saying society has these things that need to be fixed. And we believe that by developing the right technology and creating the right community around it, it doesn't need to be big, we are going to have a brighter future. So they're not trying to, let's say, they're not giving up on life. They're actually trying to change the destiny that we reclaim the power of life, right? They're not in this negative mindset. They are criticizing the current system, but they're offering solution. So they are optimistic by nature. And I think that's one needs to be understood very well. When you invest into a real utility token, you invest into an optimistic future. When you invest into the memcoin, most of the time, you invest into the thinking that we are going just to go down and down and down to the rabbit hole and being more pessimistic. Because by design, memcoin have no roadmap. So do not create any value on the long term for most, right? So memcoin are offering, they are, as you say, they are rebellion to the abuse of an hyper-financialized altcoin market. And we should be glad they are there because they show us a lot of good things. But they are not the long-term solution. They're not the long-term fix. And my message for what BorgPad is doing, and of course it's going to take much more than BorgPad, it's going to take a lot, but is to still say, no, utility coin are not wrong. We were wrong in some part of the design, and we were wrong to focus too much on the hyper financialization. We should have trusted the community better. Like we did in 2017 with the ICO. Was a scam? Yes, a lot. It doesn't matter. Even the scam were so beautiful. People were doing video, they try very hard, right? Today, they don't even try. They're unknown, they give you a shitty website. The experience even itself is pessimistic, right? So I think if there is one thing you need to remember, and maybe at some point we are going to do a meme coin at BorgPad if we believe they're trying really to capture what we call the digital culture. But if they are just another reason for you to be pessimistic and to monetize the pessimism that goes, wide into the society these days, I don't think we're interested, because we want to believe we're still standing here. I'm still standing here after 7 years because I'm optimistic by nature. I criticize because I like to think of things deeply, sometimes maybe too much. But I'm by nature very optimistic over what I think life and human are beautiful. They are exceptional. And we need to carry this dream that we can do more collectively.
Okay. That was that was the most complete answer. If anybody here listening wants to really understand the crevices of the philosophy and of the thesis of BorgPad to its core, replay the last 15 minutes 2-3 times and understand what we're saying. I'm going to try my very, very best to quickly recap what you said in a couple of minutes and bring it back to what we're going to do next with BorgPad. Okay. So you start by saying, since 2008, we went on a very, holistically speaking, positive macro environment in terms of finance. We were low interest rates, inflation was very low, and so more money printed was on, and there was more and more liquidity being injected into the economy. This led, on top of that, combined with the assertion of what we call the ICO craze, which really in its own was a new way of capital formation, a new way. It's really the first true product market fit for crowdsourcing. We tried Kickstarter in the past. It worked to some degree, but ICOs really leveraged this decentralized coordination layer, which what 3 really is at the core, to create the outcome that we all knew and where SwissBorg emerged from. Cool. From there, we saw, as you said, beautiful scams, but a lot of scams. So that got the regulators, the attention of the regulators, and they essentially regulated ICOs to death. What happened then, therefore, is that the whole primary market, so the primary market is what we call anything before it goes onto exchanges where you can't buy an asset from an intermediary. So once Binance is an intermediary, SwissBorg is an intermediary, that's what we call the secondary market. The whole primary market, where the most of the value accrual, historically speaking, has happened, that now came back to the hand of private actors because it got regulated away from people like you and I and everybody else in communities. Therefore, that together with continuous injection of money and capital, we had stimuli checks with COVID-19, led to essentially a lot of greedy behavior into Web3, where the capital injection did not match the output that was hoped from that. So from then on, we went very short-termist on how private investors can realize their investments. Usually what they do is they invest in 2 things. They invest in equity and they have a token riding on top. Until now, most equities plays on Web3 companies have never been realized. Very few of them, maybe on stable coins, because by definition, they can't issue a token, right? Or maybe a centralized exchange. But therefore, the token was the instrument through which they can realize their investment. And that could only happen if you had someone to exit on. And then we went into this meta where we had big value accrual in the primary market, and then through diverse growth hacks, so quote unquote, and listing distribution strategies which did not involve the community, we were then able to lay off and realize our profits and our investments on the community, so to speak. So that led to the whole low float, high FDV meta that we had until essentially now, including now, where the holy grail for projects was we must list on Binance, we must list on tier 1 exchanges. And that greediness and hyper-financialization of early projects essentially then made it very, very hard for any new people to come in, because you were essentially seen, Binance was seen as like an IPO, like an exit liquidity place for anybody who was already previously invested. But those previous investors were never the communities to begin with. They were private investors. And that creates a big issue. Out of that came the rebellion of meme coins, as you said. And they were truly a rebellion because they saw the issue that we had now, where the pie and the essentially we had a capital rotation from retail onto private institutions, and therefore the communities, again, quote unquote, that this project claimed to have, were getting wrecked. And so then come people like Murad who say, like, well, let's take back the game to ourselves and let's create capital formation again from the bottom up. It is, meme coins by definition have no VC backing, so most of them at least don't have. They're created on platforms in seconds, like Pump.fun. The issue with meme coins is that they're a momentary rebellion, but they're not the long-term solution, as you say, because by definition, they add no value. Meme coins, the best product that they have is that they have no product. So it's all about distribution. That's what we learned from meme coins again, that the value of including community in the distribution of the token is essential. You can still have VCs backing it early on, but it must come through communities and you must win together with communities. That's the base essence of ICOs back in the days, the distribution from the bottom up, from the communities. And that's where communities to begin from stem, right?
Yep.
But as you say, meme coins, because they offer nothing, they're quite nihilistic. They will maybe serve for a couple of months, the term of bull cycle, but you know that sooner or later, because they add no value to society, broadly speaking, beyond perhaps entertainment, people will exit. We will not live in a Web3 where tomorrow all we have is hippos, community coin, celebrity coins and dogs. In that case, we have no Web3. So we now as BorgPad come as a counter voice to the counter voice that meme coins were in the first place, and say, like, meme coins are not bad. Inherently, we learn a lot from them, but we must come back to positive outcome and not just be nihilistic and saying everything's shit, therefore I just might as well invest in an ass or a hippopotamus. So we bring the values from meme coins back and bring them back onto what we're going to hope is going to be the next era of Web3, which is the better than sex era, where we come back learning the best from ICOs, capital formation from the bottom up, but also courageous founders that go beyond just creating shitty meme coins and shitty websites and actually want to create something good. So it's a much more curated, complacent ways, but coming back to ICOs where, again, trying to filter out the scams, and that's part of the work that we will do with BorgPad. But then once we found those founders to begin with, and once the community itself find those founders, once it becomes big enough, we come again to a industry that grows, a pie that grows with it, and we just can be optimistic and hopeful about the future of Web3. Do you think that's a more or less accurate description of what we were trying to say for the last couple of minutes here?
Very beautifully said. And again, it's not like BorgPad is against meme coins. Maybe along the way we will have a project. I think essentially our message is, if the learning from the rebellion of meme coin, which work, is we need to improve the distribution channel and we need to create community from the early on, because in itself it is sufficient to have a beautiful chart or a beautiful price action. Why not add utility? Why utility to the coin will be will basically make the two other prerequisites not work, unless building the utility takes too much away from the project to actually create the community. And that's what we help the project to achieve with BorgPad, is we help them to streamline a solution to create the community from the day early on, to think community-wise from the early on. The money that we raise within the program goes to TG, for example, and we help them to acquire this mindset of to understand it's not just I launch a token, is by summoning a token, like in the video game, it becomes a very, very powerful entity within my project, and it needs to be consciously at the center of what you're doing, essentially. So thank you for summing it up. It's that's what we're doing.
I think, Anthony, one of our biggest downfalls of you and I is that none of us are shy with our words. So we just spent the last 45 minutes talking about the philosophy behind and why we're doing things, and maybe now it's time to take the minutes that we have left to look into the future and try and clarify to everybody listening now that we understand why BorgPad exists and what we're trying to solve, what is actually BorgPad, how we will do this tangibly. And you've been writing a document that we're going to publish soon in the next coming days that divided quite nicely into 3 subcategories. We first look at what BorgPad is for founders, what BorgPad is for investors, and ultimately, because my guess is that the vast majority of people listening here are community members from SwissBorg, what BorgPad is for Borgers. So maybe let's start with the founders. We already touched upon it. Maybe don't spend too much time on those, but what is BorgPad for founders, and why do we use this narrative of better than sex to try and explain what we're trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think essentially we offer an alternative playbook to the sex cartel. And I think when I say playbook, it's very important to understand that most of the other playbook, they are very template-ish. So they give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When we meet founders, they show us their token distribution. And I say, why did you do that? I don't know. Someone who show up, say, that's what you should do to whatever being distributed by this guy, and just doing it. So the first thing that we do is we invite founders to think, right? So that's the first prerequisite. We're not selling at anybody. Like most of the guy within this sex cartel, they just take you as long as you have money. They don't give a shit about anything else. What we're trying to establish is a very, very clear path and saying, if you think this way and start to think through these different elements, but if you convince yourself, it needs to come from you as a founder, if you convince yourself that I want to be transparent, I want to create a community from early on, I see the benefit of creating a community that is not in competition with VC. I have to do the hard job as a founder to educate as well the sex cartel, because not everything is wrong in the sex cartel. There is actually very good things. It's not a bad thing to have a VC early on, but it's a bad thing to position the VC as the same level as the community. Because if you sell, I don't know, 250K of your token to a VC, it's not the same as selling $200 to a community member. I think even at SwissBorg, sometimes we make the confusion, and we're about to change that. So doing the groundwork of explaining to VC, you are here for the long term. If there is no community, there is no token. The token won't work, and because the world doesn't need more tech. We feel very comfortable into tech. For my tech to solve the network effect, which is the power of a coin initially, I need to have community of early adopters early on. And my incentive model is to give them better conditions than you. Not because I'm trying to fool you, but because even for the long-term success, which you guys are investing for, it is a prerequisite. So we help founders to reflect on all these points, on how to create a community, how to be transparent, how to be committed to a more long-term thinking and stop buying out-of-the-box solution or magic solution, right? Stop being into the artificial thinking that if I bought my Twitter account through a Galaxy campaign with people that have no incentive, they have no interest whatsoever in my project, I see more value in having 100,000 followers on my Twitter account than in having 5,000, but all committed. Mm-hmm. And why? Because again, the sex brainwash you, and they say, "Oh, we cannot list you if you don't have 250K followers on Twitter." So people start to basically spend the money to buy fake follower. For what? At the end of the day. So we eliminate all this resistance to the project. We say, in any way, in the market today, there is clearly data that shows you centralized exchange will bring you no user. The only reason why you might want to go to a centralized exchange is if you have already an existing community, and this community, you convince yourself that they will not be smart enough to use the centralized technology to buy your token, which I believe is wrong, especially if you reuse the same budget that you will have spent to go to a centralized exchange. So we go and we make very clear that if they work with us, that's all the hard work that we will be doing together. When they accept, then they will put them into the machine of BorgPad, which, as you say, I'm sure we will have the occasion to details because it's going to take another 15 minutes. But basically, the outcome of putting them into the machine is to say you are going to TG on DEX using BorgPad, and you're going to involve community, not big tickets, because that will be not logic, but you will involve community member from the day one into your cap table, token cap table, and you're going to leverage this guy to actually create your first layer of community members. and it's going to be essential for you to be success. So in our model, and now I'm touching as well the investor, which was your next question. So we commit both founders and investor to a model where founders don't dump on the community. Actually, they give the chance for community to participate into the distribution value chain, which is actually today is only capture. Any community member is denied to participate into this value chain for most, because it's entirely captured from KOL and centralized exchange and market makers, what we call the sex cartel. So we say to founders, you're going to invite the community to participate, and the community, we are going to ask them to provide the necessary foundation for the token to have the initial vibe, the initial layer that help to evangelize what the project is doing. And it's an invitation for both founders and community not to dump on each other, but create together for the future. Mm-hmm. While at the same time, everyone participate to the full spectrum of the value creation. Either if you are someone that just believe into the distribution mechanism, so we give you tools to speculate on the distribution, but the potential distribution of the token, or if you have a value investor, and we give you the chance to participate early to hold, and if the project is successful, to make money. Now, last question. Maybe you want to add something.
Before we go to the Borger, yes. I think we've been on many calls with different founders over the last few weeks and months. To your point, I think what we do best at BorgPad is to say to founders, time to take responsibility again on your own shoulders for your own project and your own outcome. And I think that's something that's been missing a lot on the previous meta. And that's really the way I see us as BorgPad for founders is almost as this Gandalf persona in Lord of the Rings who goes to see, I forgot his name, the king of the humans, and goes like, yes, go bring the ring to the volcano because that's what you believe needs to be done. But do so for the right reasons in the right way. Take back responsibility of your token distribution, take back responsibility of creating actual community, and believe in something, believe in your own future and believe in your own capacity and your own vision and your own narrative around it. Taking back control and responsibility, I think, means stop setting this off to what you exactly said before, the sex cartel, which is giving KOLs the job of marketing your token, which is giving sexes the responsibility of selling your token to their users. And it's giving market makers the responsibility of creating decent price action, which we know in all three cases, you achieve the opposite at term because you don't assume your own self and your own future. So I think what BorgPad in essence is for founders is a set of tools that allows you to take back responsibility for your own future. We've done this with SwissBorg, we've done it with XBorg, we know how to do it, and that's probably what we do best. And that's the value proposition we offer to new founders is if you are courageous, if you see that's wrong with what's going on right now and you don't believe in the old meta and you think there's a better way of doing it, we have the tool sets and we can help you from A to Z to get, for the right reasons and in the right ways, to successful TG and beyond by you yourself keeping the responsibility on your shoulder. Will help you manage it, but at the end of the day, we want to be kingmakers. And have you shine for what you have to offer to the world and take that responsibility, right? And that obviously translates to investors who then be able to participate with these founders.
And we got to be honest, it's a difficult task. We're going to make mistake. Along the way, we don't want to be too cocky as well. Like we have a lot to learn. But I think as you mentioned, as you say, you asked me earlier, I think the timing is optimal. I can see in the timeline, people are awaking to the abuse of the space. It took time, but the timing feels very, very right. And I'm convinced we already made founders. Like we didn't make any founders that say, no, you guys saying bullshit. I think it's hard, to digest that actually, I thought of all these things all this time. I was contemplating my token economics for hours, trying to assess what's the best ratio. And you guys demystify that right away and say, no, do the right thing. Being more simplistic with the mathematic formula and commit the work, the energy that you're spending there, commit it to actually build something and be with your community. But most of the time it is well received. So we'll see.
It's one thing to agree and then to execute. We see that the most friction then happens when we actually ask them, okay, are you ready to commit? And then, but the investor, but this, but that. So there's still work to be done, but I do fully agree with you. I think history is on our side. And if we manage to execute, we can really change something beautifully here, which leads us probably to the last point you wanted to mention, Hans, because the only way we can actually change this is, I think it takes less and less people to make a big impact because of what technology progress allows us to do in AI, but it still takes some community and a strong base of believers to create a very loud and resonating message. And that base of believers for us, obviously, are dear Borgers who've been with us for many, many years. And I think the question that everybody's dying to hear, to ask, and the answer they're dying to hear is, what does BorgPad ultimately mean for someone who's been with SwissBorg for the last 3, 4, 5 years, who's invested in the ICO, who's invested in Series A, who's a Genesis member or Generation Premium member? What does that mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a very critical question to answer. But ultimately, coming back to how we started this conversation, what I was saying is, I think if you look at the space, we are part of this sector that truly committed to decentralization. And it's not only a claim, we've seen that through products. Smart Yield, the MEX recently, and there's many others, I'm sure I forget about it. The first referendum was done on chain with 20,000 users that actually vote, right? Where I see today the level of participation, even in the biggest DAO, not even match this level. So we have a strong community, and we created as well a revenue business that actually function. But the level of adoption of the Borg token, the recognition of the Borg token, the level of conversation, the mind share of the Borg token is very low. So I think for us, we need to grow out of the current community. We need to grow bigger, and we need to onboard people that are actually outside of our own bubble. If I try to synthesize what's the price action on the Borg token today, right? The app create a fantastic floor, right? We onboard user. When we onboard user, there is a certain level of conversion toward premium and etc. compared to a churn rate. So what does it mean? Gradually, and it's a very long process, but gradually we distribute the token better. The more distribution, the more price resistant we become. Doesn't create the pump. I think many people looking desperately to say how many people do you onboard and etc. And it can create momentary pump in a moment of euphoria, but mostly it creates a floor to the token price, right, with the distribution. The more people possess it, the less they possess collectively, the less they become sensitive to price, the more you create a floor. And it's beautiful. Like there is very little ecosystem in the space that are able to claim the same. Now, where is the pump come from? That's the question. And that's BorgPad is not going to be the only answer. As I say, it's one of the different initiative, on-chain initiative that we're going to launch. But it's going to still play a massive role into occupying more mindshare, because each time we onboard a project, we are going to do the LBP, which means the liquidity on-chain, against the Borg token, right? So it's going to create more and more volume on Borg token. It's going to put us on different map. It's going to attract different type of users that look at different metrics. They're trying to look at what are the most tradable and most liquid tokens. So progressively, by onboarding more and more projects, all listing in Borg token, we are going to increase the liquidity of the Borg token to a point where we're going to compete to the top 10. So now, boom, you're in the bracket of the top 10. You become one of these big guys, right? And then when you look at our valuation, we're very low compared to all the big guys. So that's one. The second one is because we are going to, if we actually incubate and help projects that in return become successful, such to some extent Xborg today, our name is going to occupy more and more mindshare, right? So people will start to perceive SwissBorg not only as a centralized app that is doing this business in Europe that is cool, but it's not the last shiny stuff on Twitter. We're going to start to insert ourselves into different conversation, being at the table and starting to compete with the biggest name in the space. And that is so critical because it cannot be achieved by any listing or any kawas and etc. It's by being inserted gradually and constantly into the conversation. So our success is going to be heavily pegged as well to the quality of the project and the success of the project that we incubate. But without being technical, if you think about it, every time we have a LBP on BorgPad, we are going to have between 250 to 500K of Borg token that is going to be locked into a liquidity pool. That's going to be now part of every routes when people swap on Phantom. This is going to be part of the mindshare when we start to introduce and prepare the TG campaign. So the money that we collect through Alpha for project of BorgPad is going to be exclusively used to prepare the TG campaign, which means more exposure for BorgPad and more exposure for SwissBorg. So we're going to accelerate our growth through the growth of different projects, which compound much faster than if you do by single user, if you want, because you indirectly capture all this B2B2C market, which we say was part of the massive success of many, many companies in the crypto space and exchange.
So what you're saying is essentially, if we're trying to cut it up in two sides, is on one side we have a mechanical side that clearly there's a path towards BorgPad's buying pressure as well as protection of selling pressure, because people, when they want to invest into LBPs that we foster with these new projects, it needs to come through BorgPad. So BorgPad becomes Borg becomes an investment instrument. People need to buy it to be able to invest, and it is locked. Therefore, there's a programmable protection on selling pressure. On top of that, because whenever you trade this new asset, one of the trading routes that's going to go through is the asset/Borg pool volume on Borg will increase as well. All of this means that it leads to a second goal, which is more important mindshare in the industry. And we know that's important. Why is it important? Because if you even, let's say, come back to meme coins, by definition, meme coins are valued, a lot of meme coins at orders of magnitude higher than Borg, despite us being a profitable business, SwissBorg being a profitable business with recurring revenue, a solid user base. We're still trading far below any of these assets, because at the end of the day, a big part of crypto investment thesis is still the memetic side of things. And so the way you capture this as a real project is, how much do you believe in the vision that this project comes forward? And our vision is better than sex. So if Borg becomes this ubiquitous base asset for all these new projects that are launching, that are succeeding, that people see as the new way of generating tokens and launching cool projects, then all of a sudden you start seeing, well, what SpaceX is to space exploration, Borg will, and better than sex will be to the new way of seeing crypto in the next cycle. And then you have the choice as investors: do I want to invest in SpaceX now? And this is the analogy that you actually told me a couple of days ago, before they reach Mars, or do I want to wait until they reach Mars? And because we know that crypto is inherently a very speculative space, and really, if you're quite honest with us, to 90+ degree, the only product market fit in crypto is speculation still. We can't ignore it. If we can become that symbol of hope, that symbol of this is the future for Web3, and I really believe in what these guys are doing, then I'm not going to wait until they succeed at the top. I'm going to start positioning myself now, and then it really becomes, in terms of price action, a self-fulfilling prophecy. So that's kind of the message I guess we also want to bring forward to our Borg coders. It's not the only solution. As you see, last week, Anto, you and Cyrus were discussing about putting, and there was a vote, the new referendum on putting Borg only on DEX, getting rid of all the market makers. And now we're going to bring also the demand side to this token by having a mechanical pathway to adoption and retention, but also a way of increasing the mindshare and the relevancy of Borg outside of the app. And that's why we also, a big reason why we're doing BorgPad outside of the SwissBorg app, is allow new people to discover this asset and the narrative, the philosophy that all of you guys have heard for the last 3-4+ years. And I think I don't know if you have anything more to add to the Borg side of things, but if not, I think, Anthony, probably we can start thinking about our closing remarks and anything else that you want to add and leave a message for, because I think we do need to do a second part to this, because we even haven't talked a single bit about how we're specifically going to do this with the products, etc. Even though it's probably not the most important. So I think we touched upon the most important thing today, but people are still interested in knowing what this actually will look like over the coming 6 months, a year. But that will be for part 2. That being said, Anthony, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to closing thoughts here.
First of all, thanks for the conversation. It's always a pleasure. I think we can discuss endlessly, but maybe I will let you start first. I have something to say, but I like you. I've been occupying the conversation a lot, so I'll let you conclude first.
Okay, well, I'll try and keep it very, very short. I think above all else, BorgPad is a clear message of hope and a signal of of continuous vision and hopefully trust as a proxy in what we want to deliver and what SwissBorg, now BorgPad, stands for. I think we inherently, the whole team at BorgPad and at SwissBorg, we're deep, profound optimists. So that's something that separates us profoundly from people that would just look at meme coins. We know that Web3 serves a very beautiful mission, ultimately in redistributing the possibility of anybody to participating in the modern financial system, of, again, being able to make anything out of your life. Doesn't matter where you come from. Web3 is the ultimate democratization layer in a capitalistic world, which is very important, therefore, of capital, right? BorgPad aims to accelerate a healthy vision for the future of Web3 to that end. Right now, clearly, there's been big issues that have been dominating the space for the last 2 years, essentially since three Arrow Capital, Celsius, FTX, everything that coming on. It led to downward spiral, and we still haven't come out of it. I think today people in Web3 are lost. They are stuck between a rock and a hard place, which is between having tokens that no longer make serious tokens that are uninvestable and don't make sense, and meme coins that they only can force themselves to believe in, and that really they don't go to sleep at night thinking, "Oh, I'm really happy that I invested in this hippopotamus token." Right? So I think the need for a voice of optimism and a clear, tangible path forward towards reigniting the flame and the passion in Web3 is critical. And I think that's what Better Than Sex is, and that's what BorgPad will do. The path, I think, is long, but the team we have now, which is, as you said at the very beginning, is a segregated team from SwissBorg. It's a small team that can iterate quickly, that can deliver fast, that has a strong degree of conviction and vision. Plus the timeline we're in, with the fact that people are waking up, is really the perfect scenario for us to execute this vision on. And if we manage to do this, then ultimately we will become the new reference, and Borg will become the new BNB, as a stupid example, but that's really what we can aim for. The sky's the limit, and hopefully it will be done with a lot of hope, joy, and good heart and good intentions, which I think is what qualifies his team first and foremost.
Absolutely, and to leave on a very positive note, I think what we see into the tech world in general is it doesn't take, like, it could only take one or two individuals to really change the things, right? And again, not coming back to the Steve Jobs or obvious Elon Musk example, but as a matter of fact, is they really did things that are exceptional, but as well, more importantly, they inspire people to potentially always push further. The dream of crypto is not to do that with one individual, but to do that as a community. And for us, what I want to say is, I don't think it is going to take us too much good founders and too much community, very strong community member to start to have an important voice in the space and to start to create, this alternative reality of the sex cartel that we we call the Better Than Sex, because we have to be playful as well. It's important not to take ourselves too seriously. And as Elon say, we control the meme, control the world, but the meme doesn't need to be pessimistic. It has to be optimistic as well. And I think that's the balance we're looking for. So join our Telegram channel, get involved, guys. Don't be shy. I think we aim as well that this Telegram channel become a source of information, the source of fun. We're not going to be like the other community. We are going to create our own culture within the channel. So invite as well your friends, people that want to know more, get involved. I think, again, is we will, me and Danny, we are going to work very, very hard together with the community. I personally be committing a lot of my time, spending less time on meetings and being straight away on the battlefield, because that's what I love the most anyway. You guys just have to join, Hapin, and I'm sure it's going to be a beautiful adventure.
Amen to that. Thank you so much, Anthony. If you guys enjoyed this, let us know if you want the part 2, where we discuss in more detail what Better Than Sex is, how it will materialize, what it might look like, which is a big part which Anthony and I have been discussing about as well, and all the details about the BorgPad launch in the next coming month, and how you can get involved. So we're more than open to this. Again, let us know. Thank you so much for your attention, for your time, and for your love. We much appreciate you, and see you soon.